Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's a new day and a new edition of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. One thing that really seems to capture the imagination of our listeners worldwide, aside from the ghosts and the creepy monsters and cryptids that we'll talk about, is the idea that we are not alone. In this universe, on this planet, there's more going on around us than could be conceived. And are we being visited by aliens from another planet, from alternate dimensions or realities, parallel universes? This is something that stirs all of our imaginations and has since the beginning of time, and stories. I'm fascinated by this, and I've challenged myself to get out of my comfort zone, as you all know by listening to the show. I'm an avid indoorsman. But I have gone out into the great wild in search of extraterrestrials, UFOs. I've put myself in the out of doors to look for these things at places that people claim are hotspots. I've been to Roswell, New Mexico. I've been to the Assetti Ranch out in Trout Lake, Washington. I've had a chance to visit some really remarkable places, Rendlesham Forest out in England, and I continue to want to find out more information, to have experiences. And I've been very lucky in a few of these places to see extraordinary sights that today I still cannot wrap my head around. Many of the experiences I've had with the other forms of the paranormal, I'll still beat myself up over looking for some logical explanation. And usually I can get myself onto a cusp of thinking it could definitely be one thing or the other. Not quite sure from day to day which way I lean. But where it comes to UFOs and strange phenomena in the sky, that's something that's really baffled me. That is something that no matter how hard I try to deny or explain away my experiences, it isn't easy at all. I can't just brush it away with maybe it was my imagination, maybe my eyes were tired, maybe, I was misinterpreting what I was seeing. The things I saw, without a doubt, defied logic. And I know you're saying, well, maybe just your logic, Dave, and that's a good point. Maybe it is just my logic. But I can tell you the people I was with that saw the same things are just as baffled as I am. And that's why we like to continue this journey of seeking interest and seeking the ideas and thoughts of others that are just as open-minded about this. E.T. Contact. Are they here? That's a new documentary. It's a jaw-dropping collection of stories from individuals from around the world that share similar accounts of extraterrestrial and otherworldly encounters. Tonight on the show, producer and host Caroline Cory is joining us. She's had her own extensive history with the supernatural. In the DVD, on the documentary rather, she takes viewers on an extraordinary journey to uncover whether these seemingly independent yet parallel reports may actually be scientific evidence of a greater phenomenon at work. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me. Great intro, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. We've been doing the show for 12 years, heading into our 13th year on the air, and every time I think I've heard it all or seen it all, I uncover new stories and new ideas and new experiencers, and it keeps my excitement level up. And I know a lot of our listeners are really intrigued by this idea of some other type of intelligence that seems to be here among us, either manipulating us or coexisting with us or wherever it comes from. But it's an exciting and kind of fascinating idea, and the thought that we're not alone, that's great. I mean, there's a vast universe out there that we're continually pushing to try to see and hear further into and witness our place in time in history. So the idea that there are other beings out there isn't so far removed. The whole idea, I think, that baffles most of us is, how are they getting here? And why are they coming here? Of all the planets in the universe, why Earth? Why is this such an important place? Now, for our listeners to get a little bit of your background, especially with your press release mentioning that you've got a pretty extensive history with the supernatural, can we hear a little bit about your story, Caroline? What type of experiences have you had?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it wasn't really seeing UFOs in the sky that prompted the questioning. It was really at a very young age. I was 5 years old, actually. That's when I had my first experience. I literally was in the presence of a group of beings. They were kind of like a light beings. So they appeared like a group of light right in front of me, and we started to communicate telepathically at the age of 5. Can you imagine? So I didn't have obviously at that age you don't have time to learn about these things or be influenced by any stories or anybody telling you anything. So that's the reason why I feel this is an organic truthful experience. And it was so vivid. I mean, I remember everything about this experience. And since then, I kept asking the questions. How did that happen? How did they get here, like you just said? And how is it possible that we were communicating telepathically? So that's how I started asking the questions at a very young age. And of course, growing up, I researched a lot. I studied and
Can we stop real quick?
Yeah.
Before you start getting into the growing up? I'm always fascinated, and I know our listeners kind of laugh and roll their eyes when they hear somebody that had an experience, and they just kind of roll over it like you're explaining how to do the laundry. You had experiences with light beings who communicated with you telepathically at a very young age.
Yes.
Where did this start, Caroline? This isn't something that happens to everybody, so I need to, dissect part of this story so that our listeners can come along on this ride with us. Where did this take place?
Well, I grew up in France, actually. So, I was just like in my home, Actually, it was, I remember because it was Christmas Eve and, everybody was like busy with the tree and all that silly stuff, And so I remember I was just kind of standing there and I was wondering about this. I was thinking, what does this all mean? And what is Christmas? And what is Jesus? I was just kind of in my own world. And all of a sudden, this is when this group of beings just appeared. And of course, it's interdimensional. It means that not everybody can see them unless you're in a certain frequency. Now I can give that sort of explanation. But when you're 5 years old, it's just spontaneous, And so.
Now, wait a minute. At the age of 5,
yeah.
you're already committed to the idea of, what is Jesus? What is this all about?
Yeah.
At the age of 5, all I wanted to know is if I could get a red or yellow lollipop, and what gifts was I going to get? I wasn't even into the rationalization stage of Christ and humanity, but boy, that tells you how different the Americans are raised from the Europeans, I guess. You were deeper in thought on this whole theory to begin with.
I think, I understand how it may sound, like the way it comes across. But really for me, it was more about feeling, I think I was just always observing the adults, like how they were behaving. And I was feeling that, just people didn't love each other, So, I kept looking for that kind of authentic love, I think, around me. I was kind of an observer, at a young age. But when this kind of stuff happens in your mind, you think that everybody else is like you. I didn't think I was any special. I thought that all the children could see those things or sense these things and question these things. You don't think that you're any different at that age. You know what I mean?
Right. That aspect I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. I get that, if you don't know that that's not happening everywhere else, it's no different than going to the zoo and seeing animals or having things take place that, we take for granted. So I understand that. I'm blown away by how just kind of, deep in thought you already were about some really heady concepts at that age. And then these beings, as if almost picking up on your
questioning and
openness, make themselves known. Now, do they make themselves known in a physical way? Do you believe you truly saw these things, or were they projecting into your mind like the telepathic conversation?
There was an actual ball of light, literally present there. And so, because I could feel a sort of an energetic transfer, like it's kind of like heat and energy going back and forth. So there was a presence there for sure. But the question is, why aren't, other people couldn't see them or sense them? And I think, well, now I have an explanation, obviously. It is because it's all about a frequency. It's kind of, it's like you're on a certain radio channel and others are on another like radio wavelength. You know what I mean? So if you're not on that same wavelength, you just won't tune in. You won't see what others are saying. So that's really how it works. And so, I think I was in a certain frequency range. I was tapping into something where these beings could, almost materialize. And I say almost because, like I said, I could definitely sense the heat and I don't know if it's electricity, but it's some sort of energy that was going back and forth between me and them. So in that sense, there was some physical presence, but they were not physical in the sense of being material, like a material shape and a material body. It was just light, lots of light. Does that make sense?
It does, Caroline. Now I'm curious about one thing. Now, what's so interesting to me is that so many people have equated aliens with angels or godlike creatures. And here you are kind of having this, theological point in your life of questioning at a very young age, and suddenly these beings make themselves known. Did it ever cross your mind? Did you entertain the idea, oh my gosh, these are angels, Christmas angels, anything of that like? Or were you kind of, for lack of a better term, were you kind of downloaded with the information of what it was you were really dealing with?
That's exactly right. So what happens is that, when you are in a certain vibrational field, let's say, and you come in contact with that sort of consciousness in this way, you're not processing information through your human brain in a normal way. Like right now, I'm hearing your question and I'm thinking about the answer and I'm finding the right words to tell, you know what I mean? So your brain operates in a certain way when you're using a human language and you're communicating that way. But when you have those types of experiences, your brain is not functioning in the same way. It's almost like your entire brain is like 100% of your brain becomes the information, like absorbs an entire set of information. It's kind of a bigger, it's a hologram of information, if that makes sense. And so, when that happens, your brain is able to right away understand what this energy is, what this consciousness is, what it wants. Of course, communicate telepathically, hear or download the message that's coming through and back and forth. In fact, because I did the same thing, and I can tell you what the message was. But that's the process, if that makes sense. It's like you don't have to ask, oh, how are you? Where are you? Where are you from? And what's your name? It's like you right away understand that this is a consciousness that comes from that part of the universe. Your whole body feels the information. And so it felt amazing. It felt like obviously very benevolent and beautiful. I mean, I wasn't scared at all. I thought like, oh my God, thank God, it feels like home, So, so that's why I stayed open, obviously, because it felt very, very comfortable. And then the message, the first thing I heard, telepathically was, we're part of the same lineage. That's why we're connecting with you. And right now we're communicating telepathically. So if you want to communicate with us, you have to do this. And they're kind of like showing me how I was using my brain to communicate back and forth, and it's all through codes. It's not a human language. And then they said, we're going to be with you the rest of your life. And so all of this in a few seconds, obviously. Can you picture that a little bit? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can picture it. And thankfully, Hollywood has painted an interesting enough picture of similar situations like that. I think a lot of our audience are picking up the kind of moment that you had. Did it have an impact to you? I know, again, just realizing that you're a child and had nothing else to base this on, to realize just how weird this really was, how out of the ordinary this was for everybody else. But at any point, did you feel a sense of fear or being overwhelmed, anything like that?
No, not at all. It was very matter of fact, it was just like no big deal. It just felt really, really amazing. And in fact, when they left, I felt the contrast, from being in there, in that energy and in that connection, as opposed to kind of coming back to, the 3D life and the people around me. So, and I think right there it was very important because the contrast was so great that it made me want to ask. In fact, that's what they told me. They said, you have to ask. You have to ask for this connection to stay with you. And so that's the first thing I did, and that's the reason why I was able to keep it with me on and off throughout my life, in fact.
Now, as you've gotten older and understood this communication better, have they ever, sent back memories that precede that moment of actual understanding at the age of 5? Now do you see, oh, you know what? They did visit me when I was a baby, or in vitro they communicated with me. I mean, is there any kind of memories you have that go deeper now that you've come to the realizations that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, like you were saying earlier, it's later on in life that I realized how different this experience was. So throughout my life, I was like, oh, okay, this just happened, and it was kind of nice, and I got this message and this and that. But now going back, keeping that connection and that information, and that energy with me on and off, I realized how important it was, and that made me ask for more. Okay, well, what else is going on, and what does it mean that we're the same lineage, and what happened before that? So I started to kind of go back in time, like you were saying. In fact, to the point even before my incarnation, so I could kind of perceive where that lineage came from and how I made my way here. And so that kind of allowed me to understand a lot about the process of, incarnation, how we make our way to the earth, and how we create a human body, we appear in a human body, but others show up and communicate with us without bodies interdimensionally like they did. And what's the difference with that as opposed to angels, as opposed to extraterrestrials, and so on and so forth.
When you were growing up, did you open up to your family and friends about these experiences, or did the visitors warn you from doing something like that?
They didn't warn me, but I actually didn't feel like talking about it. I didn't feel the need to share it with anyone. Like I said, I kind of kept my thoughts to myself. I was kind of an observer, I would look at the world and say, like, what's wrong with these people? So I didn't feel close enough or the need to share this experience. And again, for the longest time, I didn't think it was such a big deal. I didn't think it was different. Mm-hmm. It was later on that I realized, oh my God, this is not as common as I thought. And so I kept it to myself. And I think, they didn't tell me to do that. I just felt that this is, that I didn't need to do that. And I think this was the right thing to do because, that allowed me to kind of keep the questioning going and the search and the intrigue and you know what I mean? Like I kept it alive because I think if I had talked to someone and they would have said, it's not good to be imagining these things and these things don't really happen. And you know what I mean? So I think that would have maybe made me shut it off. So I think unconsciously I did the right thing of, not speaking to anyone about it.
So do you believe unconsciously you made that decision, or do you think that may have been an implanted thought now that you really kind of can look back at it? Do you believe maybe they were doing that to protect you?
Yeah, I totally think it's more, I would call it guidance. I feel like I was guided properly to just keep it to myself. In fact, I had a lot of, other experiences throughout my life that I kept to myself for a very long time. It's really just the last 15 years that I started to talk about these things. I wrote 3 books, and I started to lecture and teach, but for all my life, I just never said anything. I just felt this was the right thing to do.
So this has been truly a life journey for you and a calling. At what point in your life did you begin to open up about your own experiences?
I think I had to understand the process first. I wasn't interested in just talking about it, just to, say, hey, this is what happened to me, because I didn't think it was useful. I felt like I wanted to talk about it if I understood the process enough, if I could help other people, if I could offer other people some tools or some understanding. And so that's the reason why I kept it to myself, and I kept kind of trying to figure out the mechanics of this interaction for the longest time until I did. I figured out pretty much what my consciousness needed to do to tap into these frequencies, to interact.
But isn't that interesting, Caroline, that you kind of had this feeling, oh, this must just happen to everybody, yet you still knew to keep it to yourself and wait till you could fully realize the importance of what you were dealing with to talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and I'm glad I did, like I said, because I got to understand a lot about consciousness, the mechanics of consciousness. How does it work? What did my brain actually do in order to pick up, to just be able to speak telepathically? I mean, at the age of 5, when nobody else could around me. What did my brain, what did my energy field have to do? What was my body doing, in order for me to do that? So I wanted to understand the mechanics of all of this. And also, what's the difference between, for example, my consciousness and the people who are around me? Like, what is the requirement, so to speak, to be able to do these things, and then why at that time, and so on and so forth. So, that's the reason why it took me many years until I figured out, okay, there are certain rules, if you will. There are certain ways that consciousness can tap into these different realities, different beings, and what needs to happen. So I created a whole kind of methodology, if you will, about consciousness expansion, but also healing, because I started to have all sorts of spontaneous healings happen also throughout. And I wanted to understand, how did that work? I remember at the time, a long time ago, my boyfriend at the time had the flu or something, and he had a really bad backache or some muscle ache because he had a really bad flu. And so he was just lying there and, in the bedroom. And I just wanted to do something to help him. So I kind of, just laid there, and I just kind of opened my palm. He had his back turned to me, so he couldn't see me. And all of a sudden he's screamed. He said, "What are you doing? You're burning me." And I said, "What are you talking about?" My hand was at least a foot away from his back. And, he said that I burned him. And so that kind of freaked me out. I was like, okay, how did that happen? And then a couple of hours later, his temperature was gone, and he was he didn't have the flu anymore. So
you were tapping into kind of what a lot of people know as Reiki.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. But again, it happened spontaneously, as I was
Right.
growing up. So that's the reason why I was like, whoa, okay, so what did just happen and how did that happen? And so that's the reason why I wanted to understand the mechanics of all of that and kind of create a certain methodology so that I could teach others, to do what I just did, because it beats taking all these drugs and everything else, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of what happened. That's the reason why I wanted to wait and understand as much as I could about how consciousness works, the mechanics of it all, healing and all of that. And then I had enough information. I wrote them in books and I started lecturing and teaching.
That's great. I mean, that you had that kind of wherewithal and knowledge, but do you feel that they were leading you to do this?
Absolutely.
Were you chosen? And did they ever explain to you why you were chosen?
Yeah, it's not so much chosen. I feel like they were definitely guiding me, especially that I could remember that they said they were going to be with me throughout. So I know that they were with me, but it's not like they are these beings that choose someone who seem capable. It's not like that. It's more that we're all part of a particular lineage. And so this lineage is like, let's call it a spirit family, like a group, a soul group, let's say, groups of beings, that are capable of doing certain things. And so, one being, for example, of that group, in this case myself, volunteers to come to incarnate in human form. And so when I show up in human form, I don't stop my connection with my original family, so to speak, So the fact that I'm in human form, the rest of my lineage continues to stay with me and guide me through this human experience. And so is everybody else, by the way. You have a spirit family and everybody else does. And so each lineage, let's say, can do certain things or is here to do certain things. So some people are here to help heal or teach or just raise vibration or do all sorts of things. So that's, to me, how it works. And I could see that very, very clearly. And also we originate from different parts of the universe. And, so depending on where we come from, we can perform certain tasks, so to speak, when we incarnate in human form. And that is the reason why my purpose was to do these things. It's not like they were outside of me and they chose me. Does that make sense?
So you're saying it was, it's part of your genetic history?
Correct.
Your predisposition in this lifetime?
Yes, but not human genetics. I'm talking about spiritual genetics, if there's such a thing, lineage. Right. Yeah, I call it lineage. Yeah. So for example, for you, let's say, for example, your lineage may originate from another part of the galaxy, meaning, that's where you started your journey as a soul group. And you, in this body, you're incarnated as Dave and you're here to, do radio shows and other things. So your tool is communication. And so you're here to use this tool because you're eloquent, you're clear, you attract certain information. So that's kind of how you are at this time, helping other people. So, does that make sense? But you don't stop being connected to your original soul group, which is, from another side of this galaxy, you see, and they're constantly in communication with you. They're always in communication with us all the time. The only difference is some of us are capable of handling it. It's many people, that I meet say, well, I want to talk to my spirit guides, I want to communicate telepathically, but, they say that, but I see a lot of fear and confusion about it, because once you open up that channel, you can't close it back, so you cannot unsee what you see, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of confusion and fear, and that's the reason why most people get their messages during a dream or during a meditation or some sort of vision, here and there. Very rarely, people can just open up to that flow and just have it open throughout their life. I mean, the way I have, it's not so easy. It sounds like fun, but it's not so easy all the time.
All right, for people that are listening, and when we have listeners across the world that want experiences, that they want to open themselves to this, as somebody who's had these type of experiences and has encountered people that have had these kind of experiences, would you recommend it? I mean, is it something people should open themselves to, or do you think they should almost like the priesthood, should they feel a calling, a true calling for this, not just a hobbyist interest?
I think everybody should open up to this channel, because it is part of understanding who you really are. It's kind of part of remembering your true spirit lineage, where you came from, and what you are doing on the earth. I mean, we didn't come here just to get married, have a dog and a nice house, and that's it. I mean, we're here to do something a lot more important, and it is to bring these higher dimensional frequencies, information, downloads, truths, all sorts of information to this earth plane. And the way to do that is to bring that guidance through. So, however, there is a whole protocol that I think people should follow, because if you just open up, some people say, I just want to talk to an ET. I'd be like, wait, you don't necessarily open up to the good guys spontaneously. I mean, this happened to me for a certain reason. But most people, in fact, open up too soon, too fast, and have horrible experiences because there's some dark entity floating around and you don't know how to invoke that higher guidance, and sure enough, those dark entities are right there to distract you, to confuse you, and to latch on to you. And that becomes a traumatic experience, and then it adds to your confusion, and that's that.
Well, but you said that we should all be open to this kind of deal, but it also sounds like that comes with a definite warning and caution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it is part of our evolution to reestablish this guidance link, that flow between us in this human form and us from, before we incarnated. Like I said, like you said, a big caution, a real protocol. And that's one of the things that I taught, actually, that I wanted to create. Because going back again, as I was growing up, I wanted to understand the mechanics. I started to have different types of experiences, so that the first one at the age of 5 was amazing, and I knew a lot of things, and I understood a lot of things. But then I also started to see other types of beings, and once you see, because I could see the subtle energy. So once you see, you cannot unsee, and you see everything, you see the truth. So sometimes I started to see, dark entities, and I would see material like extraterrestrials doing different things. And so, that wasn't very nice. And so I had to learn how to change my focus, what to do when I encountered those beings, and the different things that worked and things that didn't work. And that's the reason why I created a kind of a meditation, very specific. It's very short, it's only 7 minutes. It's called Connecting to Source, that brings a very unique type of frequency around you, kind of seals your energy field off, so that you're not kind of attracting or absorbing any of the negative entities. Because if that happens, trust me, that's not fun.
No, I wouldn't gather it is. Your story fascinates me. Man, want to make sure we get into your documentary and talk about that work as well, but just your life and the things that you've had to deal with. When you realized that you were dealing with some dark energies, we'll call it that, what was the tip-off to you? I mean, were they trying to tell you to hurt yourself or hurt others? Were they just frightening looking? What can you explain to us about how you knew this was a different type of energy than what had been dealing with you before?
So there are different kinds. Some of them, they appear like literally like black, like a elongated shape, maybe like a cigar shape kind of thing. So it's not like a person, but just more of an energy, and it's literally black. But the way I know, I mean, there's different kinds of dark entities, but I'm talking about just a couple that are really that I remember very clearly. The energy that emanates from them is evil itself. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine what that feels like. It's the embodiment of evil itself. I mean, it just feels horrible. And so at one point I was coming in contact with these entities, but through a certain, I want to call it a type of training, because I could tell that my guides were there. So I could tell like I was protected, but I was kind of maybe being introduced to what else is out there in the universe. And so it was within that sort of framework, so to speak, that I started to see those types of entities and feel their impact. And so then I would see them, for example, working through other people or attaching themselves on other people. And that's what triggers other people to go kill someone or to start getting drunk, or mental illness. Most of mental illnesses have to do with those dark entities. For example, schizophrenia. Schizophrenics are, they hear voices. They are being told, to go kill or to go do this and that. And that's the truth. It's because these are usually extremely sensitive individuals, and they don't see the entity, but they can sense it and they can hear it because it's an entity. And so in fact, they are picking up this information, which is true, which is the truth. But then they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, no, there's nobody there. You're just imagining things. And so they get very confused, and so they start drinking. Most schizophrenics are also alcoholics. And so the more they drink, the more they do drugs, of course, the more they attract similar attachments, because their energy is very low, they're not protected, and you see the vicious cycle of where that's going, And so these are types of entities that I've come across, and I saw how they work, how they integrate through crowds, through, in the subconscious of those types of beings that are open, especially drugs, when you do drugs and alcohol. So you're going to see them around bars for sure. But also I had a very negative experience with the extraterrestrials that were really bad. I remember it was at night, and I woke up, and there was like 2 or 3 short guys that were in the room, and then there's some reptilian in the other room, and they were emanating like really, really dark energy. They were trying to hurt me. So I could tell that they were trying to mess up my body. And so I woke up, and right away I tried to kind of push them away and protect myself but it was very hard, because they were really like bombarding me with this really, very, very negative energy. And eventually they were gone. And after they left, I started to kind of clean as much as I could energetically. And I remember the next day I was feeling horrible, like I felt like I was getting sick. And I had to go through a period of cleansing and healing and reversing everything that they had done.
What do you think that what was the intent? Were they trying to kill you? Were they trying to hurt you? Were they trying to bleed your mind of the information you'd been getting from the other visitors?
Yeah, I think, and because this came when I started to write my books and teach that experience with those guys. So I feel that they were trying to stop me and like just harm me so that I'm not capable of, of having a healthy body and healthy, kind of energy so that I could be out there. And so that's kind of how it felt, that they were trying to harm me, my being. It was very, very strong and obvious. Yeah.
And where were your friends during this? I mean, did they not realize that you, by interacting with you, they were going to eventually put you in harm's way? Or have things like that attracted to you to try to communicate and hurt you?
Yeah, I mean, but, what happens is that by then like I said, I was starting to teach and lecture. So I pretty much had the tools but it was pretty strong. Like I said, I think they did harm me. They did do something, but then I reversed it and I asked for help. Because it was pretty strong. And I think that's how a lot of people get sick, unfortunately. I mean, of course, the diet and everything else and the toxic air we're breathing and, but I think there's a lot of interference. People are getting sick because things are injected in them. Because I know I saw it happen and I know that's how it works, unfortunately.
Injected into them from who?
From beings, again, interdimensional. I mean, it sounds very far-fetched to maybe, I don't know who your listeners are, but if you do some research, you will see that DNA can change, and you can in other words, you can transfer properties from one system to another without even injecting anything like physical. You can transfer all sorts of properties and chemical components from point A to point B, even though those two bodies are not even touching. I don't know if it's too far-fetched for a lot of your listeners, but if you do a little bit of research, you'll see. Not
our listeners, maybe for other shows.
Good. Maybe good.
Yeah, maybe for the Glenn Beck show, it's a little far-fetched. For Darkness Radio and Beyond the Darkness, that's right in our wheelhouse of understandability.
Sounds great, then.
Let's do this. I want to take a break. I don't want to take a break, but we have to. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got so much more to discuss and look into. I'm fascinated by this, as I know many of you, the listeners, are. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from
Beyond the Darkness.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. I've had more people ask me for it. I've got some more copies of Paranormal Challenge on DVD, the entire 3-disc set, all of the episodes from the miniseries on the Travel Channel that I was a part of. If you are interested in acquiring the entire series of Zach Baggins Presents Paranormal Challenge, starring me, your buddy, Darkness Dave, I've got the entire set. It's $30, autograph set from me, and I've also got copies of my book, The Other Side, available for just $10. You can get them independently. They're $3.95 shipping and handling each, or you can get them as a pair for $40 and just $3.95 shipping and handling. And if you'd like to do that, just email me, Dave@darknessradio.com. Dave@darknessradio.com. My beautiful bride will send you an invoice, and once we clear that, I will ship out the books and DVDs to you. We just got in our a new collection of them. So if you're interested, email me, Dave@darknessradio.com, and I will get those out and in the mail to you. I guess by Monday we'll be shooting those back out. Our guest this evening has a documentary, E.T. Contact, They Are Here, a documentary on extraterrestrial intelligence and the science of otherworldly contact. Caroline Cory is our guest, and it's been fascinating just hearing your story so far, Caroline, but I know you're here to talk about the documentary. First of all, is the documentary available for people to see worldwide? Can they check it out yet? How do they find out more about this?
Yeah, they can go to the website, et-contact.com, and
we'll have a link up to that, just so people know. We'll have the link up to that on today's podcast, so it's easy for you to find and make it very easy for people to go check out the website. But go ahead. Once they go to that website,
yeah, they can see all the different platforms it's available on. So right now, it just came out on Amazon Prime. And that's international, maybe not in all the countries, but most countries. And it's on, of course, iTunes and a bunch of other platforms.
Great.
And
Amazon Prime.
Yeah, Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know a lot of people have that. So we'll put that up again so you can find the information and follow along on the route that she's taking with this and sharing the stories. How did you start putting together the people for this documentary?
Yeah, so first of all, this documentary is about extraterrestrial contact, but also any form of contact with non-physical beings. So it doesn't have to be necessarily extraterrestrials like grays or something, because when you say that, usually people think that, oh, it's a gray alien or something like that. Because, like I was telling you my story earlier, I came in contact with different types of beings, light beings, and I had amazing experiences. So I wanted to bring different types of experiences in the documentary, and not just talk about the ET and Area 51 type stuff, you know. And so that's the reason why I looked for folks who had contact with Arcturians, with archangels, with grays, with like different types to kind of cover the whole range of experiences. And that's how I wanted to go about it. But I also wanted to bring some sort of science, and we went back and forth to try to figure out how we can show some sort of evidence of this contact, meaning not so much the UFOs in the sky, because I think there are a lot of films being done on that. My angle was more, I know for sure that I came in contact with someone. I know for sure that I got a download. I know for sure that I had this condition and now I don't. So something is happening. And so I wanted to bring some sort of scientific validation to this form of contact, the telepathic, energetic contact. And so I looked for scientists, first of all, who were open to the idea, who had done some work along those lines, and I found great astrophysicists and quantum biologists that were very interested actually in what I was doing. And we came up with the idea of doing a scientific experiment on camera to see, if we could measure that contact, and we did. Were you able to watch that part of the film? I don't want to give it away too much, but
I have not. We have not gotten that deep into it yet.
Yeah, so we set up an experiment working on human DNA, and we kind of in the lab we tried to invoke a non-human entity, and then we measured the DNA the before and after, and we repeated it again several times. As a scientific experiment, you have to repeat it over and over and over and compare it with a whole database, and then you come to conclusions. And the results were amazing. I mean, one of the results had to do with the conductivity, the electrical conductivity that went through the DNA sample. The before was almost neutral, and then the after was like 400% stronger when that entity was present. So these are the types of results that we got. It was pretty amazing.
Wait a minute again. Just for my slow working brain, explain this to me again. What happened?
Okay, so Dr. Glenn Ryan has been working with water and changing the frequency of water and things like that. And more recently, he started working with DNA samples. It's actually DNA taken from a placenta of women, And so we took this human DNA sample and we measured its electrical conductivity, meaning how fast does the electricity run through this sample. And so, like I said, as a control, we do it several times over a period of time. And then we invoked a non-physical entity. In fact, I invoked Archangel Michael and tried to influence this DNA sample to show that is it possible for a non-visible, non-human entity to influence and have an effect on a physical tissue. And this is what happened. It was 400% stronger at the time that we invoked this entity. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Wow. To have a measurable way, that is really impressive to me, that there is something measurable and definable in doing that type of test. What was the response of the researchers on that? I mean, what did they, how did they wrap their head around something like that as well?
Yeah, he was blown away. He actually wasn't expecting it. And he had told me before, because, there are a lot of scientific experiments done with energy healing, like chi energy and Reiki energy and healers trying to influence water or trying to, there's all sorts of different tests that have been done. So that's not new. But what's new was to invoke a specific non-physical entity and to measure and see if there's anything measurable that happens. That was never been done before. So in fact, I told Dr. Ryan, I said, that's what I want to do. He said, well, no one's ever done this. I said, well, that's the point. Let's see what happens. And so because we're trying to see if those contact experiences with angels, with anybody that's non-physical, if it's real. I mean, of course we know it's real, but can we measure that? And that's what we were able to do. Isn't that amazing?
It is completely amazing. I mean, that's a game changer. Why aren't we hearing more about this in mainstream media and mainstream news?
Well, that's so anyway, when we saw these results, in fact, there's another result that happened that even was more mind blowing. We kind of, I think he was shocked because, I can tell you about that, also. A couple of weeks later, after we filmed, that first, experiment, Dr. Ryan called me and he said, guess what? After you left, I did another test. And it was measuring the frequencies that were in the DNA sample. And what happened is after you treated it, we call it treated it, meaning, we invoked this entity and we said, make yourself visible or what have you. The frequency, one frequency that was not present there, just showed up in the sample. And that was totally mind-blowing to him. He said, you measure the frequencies over and over and over and over. So you know which frequencies are present there and are resonating. And all of a sudden, when you bring Archangel Michael, all of a sudden there's this other new frequency that starts to resonate exactly at that time. So, I mean, this is really revolutionary, I think, and he thought so too. And so, So because, it was so important, I think, and a game changer, like you're saying, after the film, we decided to continue that experimentation, because he was going to write a scientific paper, actually, but we have to continue with that. In other words, to make that known in mainstream science, you have to repeat it, although we did repeat it for the sake of the film, but to go beyond that and to get to bigger conclusions, so to speak, we have to do it over and over, maybe with other people. And like, for example, if you did the same thing, if you came in and summoned Archangel Michael, do we get that same result? You know what I mean? So you have to expand that study and this experimentation for it to become a serious or a final kind of conclusion that is scientific proof.
Would you try, aside from master races like angels and aliens, would you ever try, and just to see what kind of measurable difference there was, would you try to communicate with a loved one that you've lost?
Yeah, of course, exactly. That's exactly what happened. So after that, we are now designing an entire set of experiments to see, if I summon my grandmother, my deceased grandmother, over and over and over, do I get a particular result? And if you do the same, is it a different signature, or is it the same? You see what I mean? So it's like a long process to really get to a final solid conclusion that is scientifically based, so that we're in the process of doing that, just because what we did in the film was so mind-blowing. It has never been done before. And so we're in the process of doing that for sure.
Was there any way to quantify a measurement from you, the participant, as well, so that you've got a baseline for both you?
Yeah.
And did both energies change?
Yeah, that's what we did. That's what we did. Well, I mean, because we measured it with the, over and over and over, and me present with nothing. That was kind of the control, like without doing anything. And then we brought in that energy. And exactly at that time, this is where, the conductivity just shot up 400%. So it was very specific.
But did your personal energy change?
Yeah, well, see, that's another thing that needs to be specified and clarified. So we don't know if it's me and the energy at the time, or if you see what I mean, or if it was just the energy at the time. These are the details that we still have to figure out and continue expanding on. But what we know, and what we were able to do in the film, is just to have that correlation, that very, very strong correlation of the timing of that interaction. And so now we're going to, like I said, part of this, okay, so how does it work before and after, and different beings, and me alone, and the being, so that's what we're working on moving forward.
That's exciting. Gosh,
isn't it?
Yeah, to find out that kind of information. All right, and I know you talked to Mary Rodwell, who we've had on the show, I think about 3 or 4 months ago, and spoke to some people that are firmly entrenched in their belief systems of what's going on and happening. Now, do you see that there's, in the paranormal realm of ghosts, and even in cryptids, as we talked with Lauren Coleman last week, there's a strange dividing line in the way and methodology that people accept the information that they get and are sharing. And that dividing line can be almost religious in nature, with the fact of how people, what's the word I'm looking for here, will stand up for their version over any other version. When you're talking to different experiencers and believers in this, is there that same division bell, or is there are people pretty aligned in their thoughts and belief systems, or at least open to other possibilities of what they may have actually encountered?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. By the way, your questions have been awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I'm really enjoying this. So this was actually a very interesting process, because I've had some people who were, and as I was talking earlier, throughout my career, I've been facilitating a lot of different experiences for people through my teaching, my healing experiences and things like that. So I've encountered a lot different types of experiencers, and so it was interesting for the film. Some folks were very, very open. They would have their experiences and their story, but then when we would say, well, maybe it's something else happened, or maybe from this point on it's really your projection or something like that. So most of them would be quite open to the idea, but some I would say would be quite resistant or hesitant, or like not wanting to accept any other, like you just said, explanation to their experience. So it's kind of interesting. And I find that actually across the board, some folks are looking at this film and sending me, I get all of these emails from people I don't even know, and they're going like, oh my God, finally, like you just said, like you just did with the DNA experiment I told you about. People are saying, finally, this makes so much sense. This reminded me of this. Now I remember that. Thank you. And then you have other folks who are kind of so wanting it to be the way they think it should be. Do you know what I mean? That I think no matter what type of evidence you show, they would still be skeptics or skeptical, or just not wanting to believe or not wanting to budge. I'm sure you've encountered some of those people, right?
Oh, yeah, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Too often, I'm afraid. All right. The people, too, that you discuss these experiences with, were you ever, once you met with them, did memories ever echo back to you or any of them that, hey, wait a minute, we've met before? We're being drawn together for a specific reason, as though maybe you've all been somewhere together, or your energies have brought you together. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Not so much in this documentary. I mean, yeah, maybe a couple of folks, but sometimes I get emails from people, or I meet them at an event. They know I'm going to be there or something, and they say that after they watched the film, they remembered that we had done something before, or met somewhere, or were connected, and we kind of, when we have this conversation, I also recall that connection. So I do have these experiences every now and then, for sure.
All right. Talk to me about some of, if you don't mind, when you're doing this documentary, was there ever a point that it just veered into a direction you didn't even see coming?
Well, absolutely. Well, one of the turning points was this DNA, because we really did not know what to expect, and we filmed it live. I mean, we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Like I said, Dr. Ryan had never done anything like this, so we didn't know what to expect. And so because of certain of those results, we kind of had to rework the writing and to make it kind of flow together so we can get to that conclusion. So we had that going, but it was so exciting, of course, that we definitely wanted to do that. So that we had that happening, but also, we had a couple of the kids, you're going to see them in the film, speak this star language. And that was interesting. I wasn't planning on going in that direction, but when the kids started to speak the star language, the first one, Zach, which I think you're really going to like, something interesting happened. I had never heard anybody speak star language like this, because the star language is, it's not human, obviously. And so when he was speaking, I could kind of understand what he was talking about. And so So after he was done with the filming, I realized that this is very important. I asked him, I said, do you know what you just said? And he said, I think I do. And I said, I think I do. And we shared our notes, and it was exactly what, we both had the same interpretation of the star language. And so I realized that this is an important component. So that's why I wanted to include it in the film, even though originally I wasn't planning on it. So things like this, where you're filming and then something happens and then now you have to rewrite that in your story. So we did have a few of those, but that's what makes the documentary fun, because it's spontaneous here. It's not scripted, obviously. So
did you run up against much pushback, negativity towards you doing this documentary? Anybody trying to shut it down or keep you from getting to experiencers?
No, not so much. I think because what you're talking about maybe happens maybe when you're for films that are trying to maybe bring down the system, or like maybe talk about the government cover-ups and and how we're being lied to or this and that. And I think there's a lot of people that are not going to like you saying these sorts of things. So I wasn't doing that. My film was more about, hey, this is the different types of experiences. You can experience extraterrestrial or angelic forms or what have you in this way or that way. I actually did it very matter of fact, the way I'm talking about it, because I think it's time, because there's so many people out there who have had contact experiences, and the more we make it a big deal, the more it will stay a big deal. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to say, hey, this is the way it is, and here's the science we figured out, and, it's up to you to make what you want out of it. You know what I mean? I feel like my film is not threatening, and I think that's the reason why I didn't encounter any of those kind of resistance. Resistance maybe from some people who are criticizing, but not that sort of thing.
Did you come upon anybody that you talked to for this, that you thought, you know what, they just seem very disingenuous. I don't know that I believe this story. Or did you leave that to the viewer to discern?
Yes, actually I did. There's a few people actually that didn't make it in a film, not because of that, because when you're doing a documentary, you can't be biased. You got to put it out there the way it is. I mean, that's the way I like to work anyway. And the audience has to decide, the viewer has to decide. But because of editing reasons and some technical things, some of the footage didn't come out as good. So we left those out. But some of the experiencers sometimes, when they were telling their stories, I could see, because like I said, I've helped a lot of people go in the subconscious, so I could see very clearly what's going on in their story. And as they were speaking, I could see that they were very truthful up to a certain point. Beyond that, it's not that they started to lie about it, but it kind of, they hit a wall, so to speak, and they start to project their own interpretation of what that could have been. And so about 70% of the story is exactly as it is, and the rest becomes their interpretation of what happened, which is not exactly what happened. Do you know what I mean? So I saw some of that, but not because they did it on purpose. I think it's because they didn't know how to deal with it, and that's how their subconscious mind made them think it is. You see?
No, I completely get it. You have to worry about what they're filling in with ideals as opposed to realities.
Yeah, and that's how the subconscious mind works, because up to a certain point, you're trying to make sense out of your experience, and if you can deal with it, if you can cope with it, then you can just accept it. But certain details don't make sense. So, for example, when we get into the abduction and taking eggs and sperm and doing all this kind of experiments on your body, this is where I see sometimes they mix things up what this was for. So sometimes, for example, they say, it was for some hybridization for genetic engineering, and I was part of this kind of group of people, and it's for the highest good. Not that it's not the case, but what I'm saying, they're missing a lot of the other information because it may not be as acceptable or digestible as the rest, if that makes sense.
It does completely. And if you guys are enjoying today's interview and all of our shows, remember to take care of the sponsors that help support and keep our show on the air. All right, Caroline Cory, our guest, as we're talking about her documentary, her own experiences with the supernatural, the strange world around us. Tomorrow on the show, the true story behind an extraordinary mystery, a forgotten period, an ancient curse, and a real-life archaeological adventure with the Samoan pyramid. Our guest is going to be Maya Lynch. I can't wait for this. I know you guys love mysteries. We've done the Lost Kingdom of the Monkey God and others, and those have been huge download episodes. I think you guys are going to really appreciate this. Plus, boy, when you can get forgotten pyramids and ancient curses and archaeological adventures, it's like an episode of Indiana Jones. And you get to tune in and check it out with your best buddy right here on Beyond the Darkness. Caroline, I know time is slipping away from us, and I want to get through with more of this. And again, E.T. Contact, They Are Here. That's the name of the documentary. You can find it now on Amazon Prime. It's also on iTunes. You can check out our website. We'll have a link up so that you can find the website very easily and keep in touch. Are you open to other people coming to you and sharing their experiences? If they see this documentary and it triggers a memory, or and I'm sure you've had this experience already, they have felt isolated or alone, or maybe that they were insane because they've had these experiences and they've never had the opportunity to share them before. Are you open to hearing these stories?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I am getting a lot of emails from folks who say, I just watched your documentary and I really want to tell you my story. And in fact, we are looking for more individuals for the next film because this is going to be a series. So I'm definitely interested to hearing stories for sure. And they can, when you go to the website, the film's website, you can just go to the contact tab and then you can send us your story to the email that's posted there.
Well, as you continue on with this series, if you're ever in the need for a roguishly handsome radio show host to join you, to talk to these people and be a part of these experiments, George Norrie's probably way too busy, but Dave Schrader from Darkness Radio and Beyond the Darkness is willing to jump to your aid. So I'm not the swarthy bohunk that Mr. Norrie is, but I'm more than willing to join you. By the way, I do have to remind everybody I'm going to be hosting Coast to Coast AM this Saturday and Sunday night. So join us for a night of aliens, ghosts, and more. You can check out all the information at coasttocoastam.com. Click on the stations tab to find stations in your city and state around the world, or you can listen right from our main studios, knsiradio.com. You can go to their website, you can get their app, you can download it, listen to it, and be able to stream the show live from anywhere in the continental United States. So go check that out, knsiradio.com. And follow along with me this Saturday and Sunday, midnight till 4 a.m., both nights, as we explore the strange and the supernatural. But seriously, if you are looking, I would love to join you on part of your journey on this. I would love to see these experiments and hear these stories up close, so I'm game if you are. Plus, you've got to get out to the Assetti Ranch. I talked to you a little bit about it off air. I've talked about it on air with our listeners in the past. There is some weird stuff going on that I'll never be able to fully understand or explain. And I just don't feel people are taking advantage of that location yet and exposing it for just how bizarre. People keep talking about the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, but nobody is discussing the Assetti Ranch in Trout Lake, Washington, and it's a hotbed of strange activity. I think you would be blown away with what kind of stuff you might actually see there, and the experiencers there, including yours truly, have had some life-altering moments that, I know I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting, and I'm definitely interested to speak with you about my next film for sure. We can do that afterwards for sure. I'll let you know what our plans are and then see how we can get you involved.
And I've had a lot of people ask me to find a good documentarian because I often tell people how my sock drawer is more haunted than most of the places I've visited, and now they want me to do a documentary about my haunted sock drawer. I think they missed the point of the story, but now that I've hooked up with one, who knows what might come in the future, folks. You've got a lot into this documentary and a lot of fascinating information, and the kids, especially when you're connecting with children that are talking to you about this language and about these experiences, is it with an astounding amount of clarity? Do you see yourself in these kids as well when you hear these tales, and how calm and just, I guess, part of their life, it's ingrained in who they are?
Yeah, it's amazing. These kids, I just love them, and we only could have a couple in the film, but I'm meeting other kids as well. I totally see myself in them in the sense of the questioning and the information that's being downloaded to them, and just the clarity. I mean, they sound so wise, it's amazing. But what's so different is that and I'm so impressed that these kids are now just out talking about it at such a young age. Like I said earlier, for me, I didn't say anything for the longest time. I kind of kept all this information to myself. I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to understand the mechanics and the mechanism behind all of this before speaking. But these kids are out there. Antonio in New Zealand, he has all these drawings and these amazing art structures and things that he's drawing, geometric forms and stuff. He's got like 50,000 followers on YouTube. I mean, these kids are out there. And that is so impressive. I mean, they're just blow my mind. And it was so fun having them in a film.
Great. Well, why don't we do this? Next time you stop by to visit with us, and let's do this again in maybe 60 or 90 days, if you could bring one or two of the kids with you and connect us, it'd be great to kind of hear from all of you. And our listeners will have had a chance to see the documentary by then. And if you've seen it and have questions for our guest and the kids, email me, dave@darknessradio.com. That's dave@darknessradio.com, and we will try to work that in. Would you be willing to join us again?
Absolutely. And I can bring maybe the scientist too, depending on, what the show is about. I'll definitely have somebody interesting.
I would love to. No, bring them all. Let's have a grand old time. It's fantastic speaking with you, Caroline. And I know that we had missed communication a few times a few months back, but I'm glad that we were able to connect today and have you join us.
Thank you so much. You're amazing. You're fun. So I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome to just stay here. Let everybody else go home. We'll just keep talking. Caroline, thank you so much. Caroline Cory, ET Contact. They are here. We'll have the website up for you on today's podcast, so you can find that. Check it out for yourself. We'll also link to any of that on Facebook, Twitter, and make sure that you guys can follow along on our postings as well. That's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more mysteries and history here on the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader, and this is Beyond the Darkness.